What's up, everyone? This is Jafunk, and today we're going to do a production breakdown of my new single, Weekend Love. Let's go. Okay, so I wanted to do a quick story first about how this track sort of came to be. And, you know, sometimes music comes together quite organically and quickly for me, but other times it's a bit more of a long-winded process, and this one was definitely on the longer side of things. And this song was actually a completely different track when we got the first verse in with Mike, and then it sort of evolved into what it is now. I'll actually play you the original beat now.
Ooh, that right there, in the yellow sundress, bring that ass right here. Smile, then she roll the eyes. Baby, come with me and we can roll tonight.
And so you'll be able to hear there that the drums are actually the same, but all the music's different. So when I brung Mike's vocal over from that one onto this beat, he was like, yeah, I really like this beat, but I think the drums were better. So he then imported the drums from that original beat into the Weekend Love project, and then it started to take form. So yeah, it was kind of an interesting way to start and a bit of a sort of a mishmash of all these different parts. But that's sometimes the way music goes, I guess. Okay, so I'm going to start with the drums. And even the drums on this track, it was quite interesting and different to the way I normally do it. So one thing I like to do sometimes when I'm doing demos and making beat ideas is I'll make a, you know, like this is now the final master for Weekend Love, which you can hear here. But what I'll do just to kind of, you know, get a different perspective on things is I'll pitch the track down, let's say 2 semitones or so, and then detune it as well. And it can give you a really interesting kind of tone.
Or shit is so divine, I can take you to the top and we explore the heights. Hop in, let's enjoy the ride. This is Weekend Love, keep it bonus.
And especially once you've been listening to the original beat like 100 million times in a particular key, it can just give you a fresh perspective on the track as a whole. So what I actually did with the drums here is this loop. I made this loop, which is now the main drum loop of the track. Let me just get that up. Now, the way that actually came about was I had a drum loop at about 130 BPM, something like this. If I just pitch these up. I think that's what the original thing was. And then I pitched it down 2 semitones, and now you get this cooler, kind of darker vibe. Yeah, and then what I did here was with the saturator, if I turn that off, this FabFilter Pro Q, all that's doing is filtering it later on in the track. And then I've took a bit of the low end off there, but nothing much with that EQ. But if you check out without the saturator, it's not bad, like the drums are still quite nice, but then you turn the saturator on and it gives it this cool little bit of distortion and fatness. And also compression too. It kind of compresses the whole thing together and makes it nice and level. So I'll start from the top. The kick's actually not doing anything except being there for side chain. Yeah, it's just there for the side chain at the moment. And it has a tiny little layer, but there's not much on that. And if we go to the drum group, so yeah, the drum group did have all this compression on it. It had the Waves Kramer tape, it had the Wolf compressor, it had the Waves H compressor, it had the CLA2A, then it had a saturator and all this stuff when I was recording that original loop. But then I've just turned that all off because I think I deleted the drums out of the project file. So yeah, within that we've got a clap. And this clap's actually from Fool For You, which I'm going to do a production breakdown on soon as well. But yeah, it's exactly the same clap as in Fool For You. I don't think it has anything on it. Oh, except it's making it a little bit wider, so a simple delay. Just makes it even wider than it already is. And then we've got this Oliver clap. Again, with a simple delay just to make it wide. And yeah, I like to pan the claps wide sometimes. In the chorus here, we've got this percussion loop. And that's one from the Counts, one of the Counts packs on Splice, I believe. So yeah, the satin here, all that's doing is it's brightening things up. So if I turn that off, it adds quite a bit of the top frequencies, and it's this one preset there called the Kick Designer. I basically use that on hi-hats and percussive elements if I want to brighten them up. For some reason, it sounds better than EQ to me. So that's on there. Got an EQ to cut out a lot of that bottom end. And just to, again, boost also that high range even more so. I felt it just match the other drums better. And then I've made it super wide. And then I've also got this later on here, just a filtered drum thing, which is just basically a copy of the other drum loop, but with an auto filter on it. It sort of filters up into the
matters, just want you to be there.
This third verse here with Dana.
You don't even care. See the light, and you are by my side. Nothing compares.
Yeah. So that's what that is. And then we've got a cowbell here in the chorus. Which is it's a sampled thing. I guess it's from, I think it's from one of the Native Instruments sample libraries, and it's it's a bunch of different. They're all very subtly different, these cowbells. So if you listen to each one, and it just emulates, you know, if someone's actually playing a cowbell, they're going to have these little accents and little tone changes and hit the cowbell in different spots to give it a different tone. And so using these different, different samples here, it's going to create a more realistic feeling. So that's why I've done that instead of just using the one the whole way through. So if you listen to the loop, yeah, it just sounds more like a real loop. And to me, like when I'm trying to make music now, I'm trying to get more of this real human feeling involved in things now. Then I've got a crash, which is my favorite one. It's called the Drizzy cymbal, I believe. I think it's from some drum machine. This guy. Yeah. And the next thing we've got here is this fill. Now this fill, I made some drums that I really wanted to sound like Am I Wrong? Like a drum fill that just sounded like that one at the start of Am I Wrong? Anderson .Paak. And then, yeah, I haven't actually grouped the drums together on this one. Like normally I will group them and compress them and stuff. But I guess I just thought it sounded good as it was, so I just left it as it is. Now we're going to get into more of the musical elements. And I'll start with these chords here in the start. And like the chord progression and stuff's actually quite interesting on this one. I was pretty stoked with the chords that I had made for this track. So it starts off here with this intro section. And then the actual main progression here for the rest of the song is a different one.
Ooh, that right.
But I'll show you what I've got in the intro. So we have a silenth. And what we're playing here is, this is basically in the key of E flat or D sharp minor. And what I'm playing is the first chord is a E flat minor 7, and then F minor 7, and then finally F sharp major 7. And then at the end you hear this chord. Now, I don't know exactly what the name of this one is, but it's some sort of altered thing. And basically the way I think about it is, actually the first time I learnt it was in the key of C. So let me open up the piano roll again here. So this is the first one I learnt. So it's B, E flat, F, and then B flat. And it always leads very nicely to C minor. And the bass, you can actually play in the bass of that a G. So you can play it like this, with that G in the bass there. And yeah, it always goes really nicely to C. So the way this track had actually begun, it started with this chord progression. This was the first chord progression when I was coming up with the idea. And this is actually in the key of, I believe it's A flat or F minor. So it'll be this. So yeah, the start's kind of interesting because the intro's in the key of, E flat minor, and then we got to get to this other key of F minor. And how do you do that? And the way I did it was with this passing chord. So what I know is the first chord of the second progression is this one, the B flat minor. Now, what chord could lead to that really nicely? And I thought this one here. So that same sort of thing as we did from here to C. It goes this one. So it's exactly the same movement, just pitched down. So what I've done is I've made that the last chord so it leads nicely into that first chord of the other section. So we got, and then this one. And that's how we get there. So yeah, I'll quickly go into now the Sylenth, the actual patch itself, and I'll show you what I did. So I think it's something I came up with. And it's a very simple saw wave patch, just, your two voices, detuned ever so slightly, and then a cutoff filter, like a frequency cutoff filter here. And another thing which I really like to add is these LFOs here. So if I crank this up quite a bit, you can hear what it's doing. It's just like a LFO on the pitch, so it's giving it this kind of analog feel. Because you hear, like on the old analog synths, they had this little bit of pitch drift, which is one thing that makes stuff sound analog, I guess. So what I did here is I added this thing, and the way it's working is this LFO here, or this envelope too. What that's doing is I've put the attack up here a bit. So that means that when I play a note, it's going to start with none of that modulation, and the longer the note goes on, it gives it this vibrato more and more so. So yeah, I just thought that sounded cool and made it sound analog, so that's the reason I did that. And then the next thing we got on this chain is the Wolf compressor, and what that's doing is it's making it, there's this lo-fi slider. So there's two things I did here. Number one was the lo-fi, and if I take it off, you'll be able to hear. It really just kind of crushes the sound and rolls off that top end. So that's the reason I did that. And then this wow thing here, what that does is, again, it adds some of this pitch modulation, but this one's a little bit slower than the other one. So if I crank it up, then we've got a bit of side chaining in here. And that's just ducking it for the kick. Then I've got this compressor, and the reason I put that on there is because when we get to this section and the filter opens up, the volume increases quite a lot. So this compressor on here is just taming that a bit, so it's keeping the level a bit more consistent throughout the thing. And then just a simple EQ on the end there to duck it out of the way of the bass. Next thing we've got here is the bass, which I played on the just my bass at home. I'm not sure if I played this one on the jazz bass or if I played it on the P bass. Let me quickly listen. I think it might be the P bass. So yeah, I played it in, and I actually think, like, because I'm pretty shit at the bass at the moment, I like chopped it up quite a bit, and it took quite a few takes. So I basically just went through and played it once as well as I could, and then I did it, over and over again until I just connected all the parts together and got one loop that I was happy with. And as you can see here, I did the same thing on the chorus. I chopped it up a lot because I suck at the bass, basically. And I can't even begin to tell you how many takes it took me to get some of those licks, like some of those runs in time and sounding good. So that's basically how I did the bass. And on the bass, in terms of the processing and stuff, so okay, it's quite a beast, but so we're starting with the bass rider.
Looking at your aura, shit is so divine. I can take you to the top and we
And that's
explore
a
the
plugin
heights.
from Waves, and what that does is it basically just like levels and evens out. It's kind of like a compressor, I guess, in a way. At least I think that's what it does. So it evens out the level even more so. Then I've got a compressor on there.
Looking at your aura, shit is so divine. I can take you to
Just
the
again,
top.
because you want like the bass to be quite consistent the whole way through in terms of volume. Then we've got the CLA bass, which everything's actually turned off. So let's see what
Looking at
that's
your aura,
doing.
shit is so
Just adds a bit of low end to it, I think, even with everything off. Just adds a touch of low end. Yeah. And then we've got this audio effect rack here where this one's just the dry signal. So that's not doing anything. But then here we've got this GTR stomp, and I'm not quite sure what I've got on here. Oh, okay. So I've got a reverb and a phaser. And if I turn that up, you might be able to hear it better. And I mean, you can barely even hear that in the final product of the bass like this. So then I've got to kind of tame that and to make sure I've got no super stereo like sub stuff, I put this mid-side plugin on, and what that does is everything below whatever frequency you set here goes to mono, and that's super useful when you got a stereo bass, because again, you want that sub and that, you know, stuff around 100 hertz as well to be quite centered to give it the weight and the punchiness. So yeah, that's what this plugin's doing. It's just centering those sub and bass frequencies. And then I've got the max bass, which is a favorite of mine. And there's this always the same preset, the DS Bassum. And what it does is just adds harmonics. So it just adds more sub to it, basically, that isn't there in the normal signal. And I'll show you what I mean. So this is without it. Then with it. Yeah, so it just adds more weight to the, you know, the signal was maybe not as subby as I would have liked. So whenever I hear that I need more sub, I add that max bass on there. Then we've got a compressor, which is just ducking it, so it gets out of the way of the kick a little bit. And then an EQ, nothing crazy going on there. I think the reason I ducked it here at this particular frequency is because I think there was just like a little resonant frequency I was hearing there. So I wanted to get rid of that and just tame that area because it was sort of a bit boomy or something. And then we've got a gate which cuts out everything below a certain volume. And it's just when you're playing when you're playing a real bass guitar, and particularly like sometimes you're doing the slides and you don't necessarily want to hear those slides up and down the fretboard in between because it can make the mix a bit muddy. So I'm just cutting that out. So you hear the main notes, but then you don't hear anything else. You don't hear the slides in between. So I normally use that when I'm playing bass. And then just an auto filter here, which I think in that third verse, yeah, just gets out of the way, just a bit of automation. So yeah, that's the bass. Bit of a long chain, but everything's there for a reason. And then we got the guitar. So again, on the guitar, I've been learning the guitar now for about a year, and my playing's still not, great, I would say, by any means. So as you can see here in the chorus, there was a lot of chopping that needed to be done. So I would have gone through and, played it in a bunch of times. And then wherever there was a particular section I wanted to improve or make the timing better, I just go back, loop a particular section, let's say for this section. And I'll just go over and over again and record it until I get it right. Just so it's nice and tight. And yeah, the real beauty of this is the effects on the guitar, I think. So we're going to start at the beginning, and we've got a tuner, obviously. Then we got this guy. So this is the SSL-G channel. And it just adds, there's this nice preset on here. I think it's called guitar. Guitar. And I'll turn it off. And it just really brightens up that upper mid range, which I felt sat better with this particular track. And then I've got the guitar stomps. I've got a flanger, which gives it a more funky thing, in my opinion, a funky feeling. Then we've got this spring reverb here. Just gives it a vintage feel. I feel like in a lot of the old soul tracks from the 70s and 80s, you hear this spring reverb, so I wanted to do that and give it that kind of feeling. Then we got a chorus, just the Ableton chorus. Gives it a bit of stereo width, which I really wanted on this guitar. Felt like it sat better in the mix in general. Yeah, I just wanted it to get out of the way of the vocal and, the other stuff that was in the center. So I put the chorus on, and it also just makes it sound wider and bigger. So then we got the CLA, which is just compressing it a little bit. CLA 2A. Well, it's actually doing quite a bit of compression there, like 10 dB. And then I've got the EQ8. And what this is doing, sometimes again with the guitar, you get these resonant frequencies that pop in. So I'll play it without. And then with it, it sort of just makes it a little bit cleaner. It takes out that bass section again for the actual bass to do its thing. And then finally, I've got this plugin, which is an amazing plugin. It's called the Soothe by Oak Sound. And what that does is it's kind of doing like what this EQ does here, where it's taking out resonant frequencies and stuff that just doesn't need to be there. And it's so good because, as you can see, it's dynamic. Like if I was going to do this in EQ8, I would have to do so many of these notch frequencies here and like notch stuff out. Whereas this Soothe 2, it just does it all for you. So it's really, really good. It's a little bit expensive. It's like 200 or 300 euros, but it's really worth it in my opinion. I use it all the time on guitars and vocals and everything. So, and then a side chain on the end just to, again, duck it just a little tiny bit. Not much at all, nothing extreme. I'm actually trying to use sidechain less and less now just because, not necessarily less and less, but just only use it where it's necessary. So you can almost not hear that it's there in terms of the context of the track. But it's just giving the kick a little bit of space to cut through. So yeah, that was the guitar. Then we got this other section here. And again, same. I think I used a different setting on the guitar. So on the Strat that I've got at home, there's you can move that slider to determine which pickup you're using. And I think I used the top setting on this one and maybe the middle one for this section, just to give it a different tone for a different section. So it has its own place. It doesn't sound like the same thing playing again from the chorus. And I think it was basically the same effect chain as before, yeah. I just copied it over. Then we've got this mute guy here, which you hear in some of the verses and the chorus as well. And what does that have on it? I think it's got the same thing, the same SSLG channel. And then it's got the stomp on it, but it looks like all that stuff is turned off, so that can actually not be there. Then it's got the GTR amp. Which really brightens it up and makes that mid-range stick out really nicely. So that's that. Then we've got this EQ8 here. So first thing you hear it doing is getting rid of that bottom end, and it's also brightening it up quite a bit here around this note that it's playing. And I just wanted that to cut through more. That's the reason I boosted this section here. I think there was, it wasn't quite sitting right without it. So if I play it in the mix now without that EQ, you can just hear it a bit more, and it's a bit more present when you have that boosted thing here. And the reason I cut that is because I think there was a little resonant frequency in there somewhere, which I didn't like. Then we got a side chain again, nothing crazy, and then a gate just to cut out all the guitar buzz as well. You get really low sometimes, so it's just cutting out unnecessary stuff. So that was that little mute, and then at the start we've got a Rhodes. So this is this, and that's from Native Instruments Contact, Scarby Mark 1, really nice Rhodes sound. And then what I've done here is it's got just a utility to modulate the volume in some places. Oh yeah, in the verse 3 it was a bit too loud, so I just wanted to turn it down. Then we got a sidechain compressor. We got the chorus. I just liked that effect here. It sounded nice and washy, and I felt that suited the track. Utility to control a little bit the width. Yeah, the reason why I curbed it a little bit was just so it has, again, more its own space. Like it sits in the mix and you can hear that's where that is. And then the other super, super wide stuff, that's got its extra space on the wide side of things. Then we got this Rhodes here in the verse.
Just want you to be there.
And also the soothe too. Sometimes Rhodes can have lots of nasty resonant frequencies. This one's not too bad actually. But when you get into the more high frequencies, I think you'll hear it. Yeah, just around 1K. Just kind of makes it smoother and not so harsh. Sometimes the Rhodes can be really harsh. So that was the Rhodes. Next we got the Synths, which you hear in the chorus. And I really love this. Basically all from the Korg mini log that I have at home. So the Synths, what they do is they add this like airy kind of euphoric chorusy type of sound, and it's a bunch. What it is it's three things. It's this one, and it's just a straight up one of the presets from the Korg mini log. If anyone wants my Korg mini log bank, by the way, I'm quite happy to send it to you. So get in touch with me on Instagram if you want that one, because I've sent it out to a bunch of people now. Then we've got this one. And all I've done there is I've panned this one to the right and then this one to the left. So now it's nice and stereo. So yeah, they're all presets from my Korg mini log. And on the group, I don't think there's anything. Oh, I say that and then there's a huge chain. So there's the TAL chorus, which is adding width again. Yeah, that adds a bit of volume too, and also some stereo width. Then I've got the Valhalla Room plugin. So this one I really love to use if I want like a really short, tight reverb. This one's much better than the other one which I have, which is the Valhalla Vintage Verb, which is nice for like longer vocals and stuff like that. So if I crank this one up, you'll hear what it's doing. It's not too long, you know, it's like almost 3 seconds, and it's just giving the synths a bit of, it's giving them their own space in the mix. I feel like I had the vocals quite dry, so they're nice and in your face and present, and then the synths with this reverb, they sit back a little bit further to give the vocal some space. Then again, I've done this EQing here to notch out some of the resonant frequencies and the bass, so I'll play it without it. Quite a lot of low end there. And yeah, that EQ really cuts out the bottom end and makes it cleaner, gives room for the actual bass to do its thing. And finally, we've got this guy. Which here in the second half of the chorus. So yeah, that's again from the mini log, and I've done the soothe on that because this particular patch has got quite a few harsh resonant frequencies too. So if I play it to you, You can see it's really cutting out like 3 decibels or so. If I play it without it, still sounds good, you know. It's not super harsh, but it's just a bit smoother and a little bit less harsh, I guess, with that soothe on there. So yeah, that's why I've chucked that on. Then we've got this lead at the start, which I'll quickly unfreeze here. It's quite a CPU beast, this guy. But it's from the Diva. I think it's just one of the stock patches in there. It is the MK Overdrive Lite. And that's from, this is, from the lead bank in Diva. And then what I've done is EQ'd the bottom out of it. And I've got this automation here on the filter, so opening up into the first verse. So that's that. And then again, I've got the soothe on it to just curb those resonant frequencies. And just make it a bit smoother again. So that was that big lead. And then the next one you hear is this synth brass, which is again from the mini log, and you hear it in the second verse. And what I was thinking there is I was trying to think like an actual horn player would, and just have these little stabs. So yeah, it's just it's basically just thirds and fourths. So that's that, and that was with the mini log, just a basic kind of saw wave with a bit of resonance. And then we've got this moogie type of thing, which you hear in the chorus. Really moogie type of vibe, and that's with the Diva. So I think it's actually, a Moog funk lead. I'm not sure exactly from where this one came from. Maybe it's also just in the lead preset bank of Diva. And then I've just taken some of the bottom end out of it here with an EQ again. A lot of the time with EQing, I'm just taking out bottom end to make room for the bass, so it doesn't get muddy down there. And then I've got the H delay, which just adds this cool ping pong thing. And then we got a little bit of vinyl crackle here at the start. Can't really even hear that much. A small uplifter here from my own splice pack. Shout out to myself. I do use my own splice samples a lot of the time in my tracks as well. And then we got this thing, which I also think is from a splice pack of mine. Yeah. And then all I've done is I've added some auto pan to kind of make it swirl around a little bit. Like all the ear candy stuff like white noise, melodic slides. I like to, get it flying around the stereo spectrum a little bit, so it's more of this, it like tickles your ears. So we got that. Then we got a filter delay, which is nice. Then we also got another ping pong delay. So yeah, it's just affecting the shit out of it basically, and making it like bleed out a little bit into the next section, which is nice. And then I think that's it. We got a string in the last section. Just a string drone, which I believe comes from the Grant Nelson Garage Pack. And that's basically the track. Reverse the slide there. So yeah, this was a really fun track to make. It was the first track where I've actually played the bass and the guitar, so I was super stoked to actually use some real instruments on some music that I actually played. And yeah, it was a really fun one. And I'm actually going to, so I've got the vocals here in one audio file, but I did mix and process them all myself as well. So I'm going to do a separate tutorial on how I did the vocals for this one. But yeah, I hope this has been insightful and that you've maybe learned something from this. And I'm going to do plenty more of these. I'm also going to do one for an older track I did, Fool For You. A lot of people have been asking me about the bass in that track, so I'm going to finally get around to doing that one now. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you again very shortly.